No borders, no nations, stop the deportations. No borders, no nations, stop the deportations.
My name is Tony Ramirez. I am a family doctor up in Santa Rosa, originally from El Paso, Texas. And I am here today in solidarity with my healthcare workers and fellow human beings to protest the camps and protest all the atrocities and inhumane things that are happening at our borders here and across the nation.
And these children, what is the effect of children with these kind of cages, this kind of stuff?
So we know that separation, children who are separated from somebody who is loving can be incredibly impactful to their mental health. Not knowing when they are a loving person is going to come back can be incredibly crappy to their mental health. It has long-term effects. Simply a couple of minutes of being away from a loved one and not knowing where they're coming back can have traumatic effects in the way that they function in the world and the way they trust in the world. And I think us as providers, we're out here trying to come together in solidarity and recognize the human impact this can have, and trying to find a way to show our fellow human beings from all over the world that we are here to hold space and love for these children and for these families.
What kind of country would do something like this to these thousands?
A country, I think that we've known that we are this country for a long time. This isn't new. It's just at a max. And I think as Americans, we have to figure out how we want to shift that and what we need to do to shift that. And being present with each other and talking to each other about what that can look like, I think is important and powerful. If we don't come together and talk about what we need to do, we won't get there. And we've known this for a long time. It's not anything new. This is the inception of us, of who we are. So something needs to shift.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm Yakira Title. I'm a physician, and I'm here because I care for many migrant families. My own family has a pretty recent history of migration. I'm expecting my own baby, and I cannot fathom being separated from her. And
It's a horror.
Travesty, and it's just unacceptable to stand by and not say something.
You're a doctor?
Yeah.
You're at?
I work for the Department of Public Health. I'm a family medicine physician.
And the trauma for these children and their families.
Yeah, I actually did a master's in public health looking at the trauma that adolescent immigrants go through when they're separated from their families. And it doesn't stop when they get here. And that was before we started separating families at the border. That was before the camps. So, these days the trauma that kids are experiencing is only worse, and will take decades to recover from. So, the sooner we stop it and the sooner we never let this happen again, the more lives we'll save from trauma.
And who would do something like this? It seems like it's traumatic, it's destroying people, it's really mental health.
I think it's a fascist government that does something like this. My own family, my great-grandfather was sent to a concentration camp by a fascist government. My grandparents were refugees fleeing a fascist government. I don't see much difference between what we're experiencing now and the beginnings of what they experienced in Germany in the 30s and 40s. So we have to speak now and before it gets worse.
Peter Cooch.
You work at?
I work at UCSF.
You're here today this morning in front of the Immigration Center. What brought you here this morning?
I wanted to protest the detention of children and families, the separation of children from their families, and the incredibly cruel acts that our government has been taking against innocent refugee and asylum seekers.
As a healthcare worker, I mean, these children, these families, what is happening to them?
They are being traumatized right now. This is state-sponsored kidnapping. These are children and families who are legally entitled to protection, to hearings. They're fleeing violence in their countries of origin. And when they come here at the border, they are subjected to inhumane conditions. They are drugged. There is an ACLO lawsuit over this. They are held in conditions away from education, away from healthcare. I'm a pediatrician, and the detriments of separating a child from their family are so well established, this is causing lifelong harm.
What kind of government would do something like this?
I believe that these actions are not for security. Immigrants here commit far lower levels of crime. They're not for economic reasons. Immigrants add billions of dollars to California's economy per year. These are purely racist actions that are occurring right now.
And how do you think it's going to stop?
It's going to stop. I hope it's going to stop with all of us coming together and saying never again. That this cannot stand, not in our country, because this would be the end of what we stand for.
Thank you.
Let's give back all back to the planet and everything that is alive with it.
My name is Amber Akemi Pyatt, and I'm an organizer with the Public Health Justice Collective.
And what is the Public Health Justice Collective?
The Public Health Justice Collective is a network of public health advocates, professionals, students, and workers who work together in the San Francisco Bay Area to advance social justice.
What kind of work do you do?
I do work around liberation for all people. I do anti-prison, policing accountability, and immigrant liberation work.
So why are you here today? What are the reasons you're here personally?
Sure. We're here as a broad health community to stand united with the folks who are calling on the U.S. government to close the concentration camps that are holding immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers today. Personally, I am a fourth-generation Japanese American, which means that my grandma, my great-grandma, my great-grandpa, my aunties, and my uncles were all held in U.S. concentration camps in World War II simply for being Japanese American. And I bring that intergenerational trauma and the work of intergenerational healing to the work I do today.
And there are thousands of young children that are being incarcerated. I mean, why would this government be doing something like this?
I think this is really rooted in a tradition of U.S. white supremacy, white nationalism, both on the land here that was stolen and abroad. This is part of a broader xenophobic, white supremacist sort of policy agenda that we've seen resurface in different ways from generation to generation.
And are you concerned that this is going to grow, that these attacks and roundups could be growing around the country?
I think the threat of a growing issue here is certainly real, and even if it doesn't grow, it is already a tremendous issue worthy of all of our attention and urgency.
We have 3 speakers today. The first is Alali Martinez. Alali Martinez is a UCSF internal medicine resident working at San Francisco General Hospital.
I have to go back to work.
She has to go back to work. And she's here to share a poem about her family. So I want you guys to listen, to take it in, and then we're going to share a moment of silence.
I'm going to put my sunglasses on preemptively. Thank you so much for doing this and for having me here. So about a few weeks ago, we all watched the news and saw this little girl, Magdalena, from Mississippi, cry to the cameras when her father was detained. Sorry. And this really hit very close to home for me. So I wanted to share this poem that I wrote a couple years ago when I was a medical student, and we were in Washington, D.C. trying to fight for DACA. And so thank you so much. This is very hard for me to share. Last time, a very dear friend of mine read it for me because I didn't have the courage to do it. But I hope that I have the courage today. I was 6 years old when ICE took him away. Discovered a few months past his stay. A deportation one we couldn't resist. For a moving infraction for which white men get a slap on the wrist. Confused and afraid, was there something I could do? If they took my dad, could they take my mom too? The pain and loss I felt never went away. Even 20 years later, I still feel the dismay. He watched through a screen as I walked down the aisle, still trying to make every moment worthwhile. For the abstract concepts of borders kept us apart, void of the moments taken for granted by our white counterparts. The worst part about this is as he grows old, his health issues start to unfold. Hard enough to manage family illness on the same side. Imagine the burden of doing so with a country divide. Mental, physical health disparities and addictions, all a result of selfish political decisions made by cowards in ivory towers targeted to hurt those that are poorer and sicker, feeling unstable when their rights are stripped in a flicker. Despite all this, I check my privilege at the door. I'm a citizen at birth, a right at my core. I promise you at my next to use my privilege, my body, and my voice to fight for communities that have little choice, because love has no borders. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Danielle Nahal. I'm a second-year resident at UCSF in pediatrics.
And why are you here today?
I am here today to protest the camps that are being run by ICE, specifically at the border, that are separating children from families, keeping children in inhumane conditions, not allowing them access to medical care, sanitary conditions, essentially letting them exist in a place where they are highly at risk of developing life-threatening conditions. We've already seen children die at the border, and it's an absolute humanitarian crisis, and it's a shame on our country.
I mean, the effect, the trauma, the effect on children and their families, what does it mean for the future of all these thousands and thousands of children in their families?
It's going to be utterly devastating no matter where these kids end up. We've already seen children who have been able to be reunited with family, even after only weeks of separation, who don't recognize family, who are they don't eat, they don't sleep, they have nightmares, they can't connect to their family. They're so deeply traumatized with this experience, they're not going to recover from it. They're going to keep dealing with this the rest of their lives, no matter what country they're in, no matter what state they're in. We're destroying a generation of children's minds and their hearts and their relationships with their families. Like, this is not just about facts and borders and separations and details. We're destroying lives. We're destroying the lives of children who have had no choice in what is happening to them, and it's unacceptable.
What does it say about this government that would do something like this?
It's just beyond imagining that we can allow this to happen, and that we're paying for it to happen, and that we're comfortable with it happening, and that this is a national policy that we're doing on purpose to have an effect on immigration. It's a complete human rights disgrace. Like, it's like so deeply troubling as a doctor to be seeing what is happening, and to know that we've had like 10, 11 children die. Like, it's like, we would never allow this to happen if we were running something in another country, to have like children just die in our facilities, and to have their symptoms missed for days, to have them had to be transferred out and airlifted. Like, it's outrageous. It's disgusting. Like, yeah.
What's going to stop it?
We need healthcare providers. We need everyone in a position of power to speak against it, and to rally against it, and to cut off ties with the places that are funding these organizations, and to cut off ties with everything associated with it. And what we need, especially people who have the minds and hearts of children, at heart. Like, this is my job, is to care for kids no matter where they come from, no matter what language they speak, no matter where their parents are from. And I cannot ethically, for my own profession, let this continue to happen. And so that's why I'm out here.
No borders, no nations. Stop the deportations. No borders, no nations. Stop the deportations. No borders, no nations. Stop the deportations.
My name is Bob Thawley. I'm a public health researcher and a member of UPD 9119.
And as a trade unionist, why are you here today?
I mean, this is an issue. It's a workers' rights issue. It's an issue, just a moral issue and a human issue, that we have to end these camps, end these detentions, end the provision of neglectful and abusive, consciously abusive medical care that goes against the oaths that medical workers sign, and that bosses, the detention facilities, the government, are putting people in positions of abuse and neglect, even if they're trying to do well.
And these for-profit prisons are profiteering from it. Absolutely. The drug companies. I mean.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, it's a corrupt game, and there's lots of Trump supporters who are making bank on separating families and incarcerating asylum seekers.
And what do you think the labor movement should do about it? I mean, there are millions of workers in unions.
I mean, we should go out about these things. I mean, at the bottom line, that's our power, and we should take personal and political and group stands. That's why we have unions, is to organize and to be together. And this is the only way we're going to make effective, real change.
And some of the people here have said that it reminds them of concentration camps. Their relatives were put in concentration camps. I mean, do you think there's a similarity between what has happened in the past, the Japanese Americans, the Jews who were put in concentration camps?
Well, no doubt. I mean, it's a class of people. It's consciously abusive. It is a concentration camp. And, we're seeing that I think the simple answer is yes.
No borders, no nations. Stop the deportations. No borders, no nations. Stop the deportations.
We are here today standing together, and we want to welcome our next speaker.
Yep, so next we're going to bring up Catalina from Mi Gente. Yes. Who's going to talk to us about the intersections of immigration enforcement, capitalism, and tech.
Oh my God. All right. Go ahead.
Hello everyone, my name is Catalina. I'm an active member of Mi Gente, and we have been working on the hashtag No Tech for ICE campaign. We at Mi Gente are a group of Latinx and Chicanx people who want to see our entire community thrive, brought together by a shared consciousness of the challenges we face and a deep-seated need for co-development and kinship across identity, generation, language, and place. We are pro-Black, pro-Indigenous, pro-woman, pro-queer, pro-poor, because our community is all that and so much more. Immigration enforcement and detention means big bucks for the tech industry. ICE cannot develop or operate its massive information systems without the technology industry and its products and services. UC system should divest immediately from companies supporting ICE and other DHS agencies targeting migrants and immigrant communities. This includes Salesforce, whose contract with U.S. Customs and Border Patrol manages recruitment of officers and management of border activities. Benioff refuses to end its contract with serve as the key contractor in DHS's migration of the agency's $6.8 billion information technology portfolio to the cloud. The government's move towards cloud services has been the result of the cloud industrial complex. UCSF uses Amazon Web Services to store, analyze, and share information, including protected health information about our patients. UCSF IT can pressure Amazon Web Services to drop its contract with Palantir and the Department of Homeland Security. Finally, we are calling out UCSF contracts with Airmark. Airmark is a food service giant that runs facilities for universities, hospitals, prisons, and detention centers. Airmark has been repeatedly charged with providing dangerously unsafe food to prisoners. Airmark currently has a contract with the Mission Bay Conference Center. UCSF can ask facilities and should ask facilities and food services to drop its contract with Airmark until it stops working in jails and detention facilities. We are calling on our public health and healthcare colleagues to create a movement for demanding our public health, healthcare, and medical institutions divest from the companies that are at the root of this deadly campaign against immigrants. When we take a stand locally, looking at these root causes in our own backyards, we built the momentum to radically transform our system. La lucha sigue.
Yeah. So next we're going to bring up longtime activists and healers from Clínica Martín Baró. And welcome them up and share some of their work.
I'm not surprised though, when we began to hear about the number of children dying or the number of children who have been jailed. Not surprised at all with the legacy of this country, with the slavery of African, and the rape and the genocide of indigenous people. So we really are in many ways experiencing historical amnesia. I think that the compañera was talking about the experience of Japanese people. That's also a history that is really important. And Democrats have done almost the same, and at times as worse as the Republicans. I'm not here to defend them, but I recall the moment when Madeleine Albright was being told that 500,000 children in Iraq will die as a result of the sanctions, and she said it's worth the price, and we have seen the sanctions in other countries, and it's really important that you do what you did today and to do it much more. We work at a clinic where the legacy of Martín Baró lived with a new generation of people who was murdered by a U.S. trained battalion. And that's really important for all of us to be reminded of what is that this country is doing and what is it that we can expect for Trump. We can only save ourselves by organizing, and what we need, in fact, is many of you to step out of our clinical settings and defend the rights of people. That's really important. Fidel once said that we need to have an army of white coats who defend life and not destroy and kill people. Thank you for the opportunity. Maria will take the mic.
¡Dale, María!
Primero que todo quiero empezar por decir que hay que tomar un momento de silencio para todas las familias y compañeros que no pudieron estar presentes hoy en este día por la causa del miedo, por la causa de la policía y por el causa del trauma que este país nos está causando. empezar por decir que todos estamos aquí porque tenemos la capacidad de crear visibilidad. Tenemos el poder como una comunidad de estar presente y darle voces a nuestras comunidades que están siendo calladas por la política y por la presidencia que está presente hoy en día. Cada día en la clínica nos llegan pacientes de diferentes rumbos. Every day at clinic, our patients come in from different walks of life. Many of them, for them, it is the first time seeing a physician in 10 years. Many of them have also experienced traumatic experiences by the U.S. and the healthcare system going into their lands without their consent. This is very important. This is a narrative that's not told. As healthcare providers, you have power to make a difference in our communities. You have a stance. You have the visibility. You have the ability to create a political climate in the areas that you work in. I know for many of us, this is difficult, because for many of us, we are the first ones in our family to navigate these waters. Many of us come from families who were told to be silent because our bodies is the only thing that is used to provide in this economy. But that can no longer be the case. That can no longer be the case. Ya no. Ya no. Ya no. Ya no. It is our job to bring on youth, to believe in our youth, to believe in one another and create spaces where we can engage in dialogue, where discrimination and the feeling of uncomfortable because of racism is present in our work areas. It is our job to create this presence because it is needed. It is needed for our patients. We're much more than just an economy. We need to change that narrative because it dehumanizes our people. Many of our people won't lift their voices because they're scared of losing their jobs, because they're here to provide for their family, because they're seeking asylum, because of war in their homelands that the U.S. has caused. Many of us here have been ripped up from our homelands, not by choice, but because our parents wanted a better future for us. We deserve dignity. We deserve respect. And so I ask you, as future healthcare providers, as educators, as organizers, as nurses, what are you going to do to give voice to our communities? Thank you.
I'm Lisa Milos from UPTI. I'm a rank and file member of UPTI.
And this is an event for healthcare workers. Why do healthcare workers have to be at INS today? ICE.
Right. Well, public healthcare workers are fighting because what's going on with the people that are being detained, the children and the people that are being detained. First of all, the entire detention system is basically concentration camps. And healthcare workers have, specifically doctors and nurses, have a do no harm oath that they have to make, where basically means that we have, all healthcare workers have moral obligation to oppose concentration camps and repression, and also to basically oppose discrimination, and which is what this is as well.
And the Democrats recently voted for $4.2 billion for more camps, more. Should they could have had a clause in there, no for-profit.
Yeah, I'm very incredibly disappointed in Nancy Pelosi's. Basically, she rolled over on Trump's ask for $7.8 billion or $7.43 billion that they gave to ICE, to the DHS. In reality, they could have given that with setting some kind of timelines or some kind of timelines for complying with the basic requirements of making sure that children even had damn toothpaste, for example, you know. But the whole toothpaste thing is completely irrelevant because in reality, the government is already violating the Flores settlement. The Flores settlement, paragraphs 14 and 19, states unequivocally that the children should only be there for 20 days, okay, number one. And number two, afterwards, they either need to be released or placed in the least restrictive environments appropriate for children. And they're not doing that. Now he wants to extend it. Trump wants to extend it. So they're already in violation of the Flores Agreement. And here we are talking about toothpaste or toothbrushes. They should let them go, number one. Let all of them go.
What should the unions be doing about this? There are AFSCME, there's SEIU, there are millions of union members who are healthcare workers.
Well, I know that that thousands and upon thousands of rank and file members are opposed to this, and I was recently at the CWA convention as a delegate, and they also expressed their opposition in their civil rights committee reports. They also expressed their opposition to these kinds of detention centers and the treatment of immigrants in this way and the undocumented in this way. But we need to take it further. We need to make the politicians responsible and use the clout of the unions to stop this, and if necessary, stop, just completely do a work stoppage.
A national general strike?
National general strike. And that's my opinion. Yeah, my humble opinion. We need a national general strike to stop these detention centers, because this is big business. This is corporate big business. They're making money off of the death and imprisonment of children and families who have committed no crime whatsoever. It's not a crime to migrate. And in fact, the people who are in government right now are the ones who are the criminals. Elliot Abrams, Pompeo, and John Bolton are the actual criminals and criminals of war who have been inflicting harm upon harm to hundreds of thousands of children and families worldwide with their bombing campaigns and their sanctions against countries. Those are the criminals, not the ones who are in detention centers.
Sure, my name is Roman, and been here a few days this month, and it's just the history of this country has been continuing to scapegoat immigrants and lock people up. And it's disgusting. So I feel like everyone who has the ability needs to speak up about this and show up in any way they can. And there's a lot of different ways that folks can. And we're going to be here every day in August.
And you say it's the history of this country. What other instances are there like this kind of incarceration of children and that kind of thing?
Oh, sure. There's the Japanese internment camps that happened during World War II, where folks were here in the city too, in San Francisco. So for folks who have this idea of San Francisco as being this liberal, progressive haven, recognize that the city has, in its history, taken part in rounding people up.
Hi, my name is Juhi. I'm a third-year medical student. I'm here to learn about what folks are doing about the crisis at the border and to think more broadly about the ways in which healthcare can help but also hurt. Really just here to support all the amazing work that's going on by folks.
And the effect on children, are you concerned about that?
Absolutely, it's devastating.
I work with the Asian Prisoner Support Committee, and this year has been a huge year for Southeast Asian deportations. There have been so many attacks on our Vietnamese and Cambodian community as well. But this year, 11 folks who were incarcerated and got out immediately got scooped by ICE and were at risk of being deportation. We fought 11 times and we won 11 times. Shows the power of actually rolling out, of having intergenerational communities here, of having healers, of having artists, of having people who are dedicated to the safety of our communities. And one of the chants that we led in Khmer was, when we fight, we win. So the chant goes, Pel Yun Pracham, Yun Chnea. So if all of y'all could say Yun Chnea, we'll lead it, all right? Pel Yun Pracham, Yun Chnea!